Hey, much as the little pup might be on the more disliked side, I've always stood by saying that the first season of Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo is still a totally solid seasonal entry in the franchise. And ever since I picked up the first season on DVD and gave it a good thorough rewatch a few years ago, there was one episode I wanted to talk about because it's actually the opposite. There is one episode in this season that is so bad, I really cannot stand to watch it. It might genuinely be the worst episode of Scooby-Doo. For me, disclaimer. And the craziest thing is that Warner Brothers had the absolute audacity in 2019 to release this episode on the best of 50 episode collection for the 50th anniversary. And this also is the season finale, and technically series finale for this version of the show, before the franchise got a pretty drastic reboot. You see, Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, which aired all of its episodes except for this one back in 1979, was originally going to run a little shorter, but they decided to add on a few more episodes and even it out at 16 like a lot of other Hanna-Barbera shows. And because of that, we now suffer with having Season 1, Episode 16, aired originally on January 5th, 1980, taking us into a new decade with the Ransom of Scooby Chief. If you're wondering what the hell Ransom of Scooby Chief means as a title, it's a clumsy reference to the O. Henry short story The Ransom of Red Chief, published in 1907, about two kidnappers trying to capture a boy so troublesome that they pay to give him back. This episode sees two dognappers trying to catch Scooby and friends, hence the reference. A lot of children's shows get a take on the story, so this is just Scooby's. The good thing about this one is this is the final time Scrappy's original voice actor Lenny Weinrib would voice the character in the main show, as the show was about to get a fresh revamp following this finale that would place Scrappy at the center, and Weinrib wanted a raise for performing the role. Instead, he was removed, and Scooby's voice actor Don Messick would take on the part instead until his passing. And that was what really saved any redeeming qualities of the character, who was intolerable when performed by Weinrib. As the series was preparing for big changes, this episode starts to already present them to us in a lot of ways, with many considering this to be a backdoor pilot for where things were headed, or even something small. This is the final episode to use a laugh track in the main series like every episode before. The final time entirely until the throwback use in the What's New Scooby-Doo Halloween episode that I recently covered, and that aired 23 years after this. Likewise, this is the first episode to not feature monsters or other supposed supernatural elements, something that would become equally as common as real supernatural elements in the coming revamp. Perhaps most notably, Fred, Velma, and Daphne are basically reduced to background characters and cameos, essentially not existing. Velma has one spoken line but isn't even seen when it happens, which would continue with Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy as the only characters to appear anymore starting in the very next episode. Daphne would at least rejoin them in 3 years for the next few shows, like the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries which I covered, and Fred and Velma would occasionally guest star, but starting with this episode the entire gang would be lost as a whole until a pup named Scooby-Doo. And with Scrappy being the main focus of this episode, we also get a taste of how horrible this coming iteration of the franchise would have been had Messick not taken over, as this much Lenny Weinrib as Scrappy to me is near torture, and I'm a Scrappy defender, just a Don Messick as Scrappy defender. It doesn't help that we add two other pups that are also just here to be chaotic and annoying. I can't imagine what it would have been like had the revamp replaced the trio with these two permanently. Anyway, let's take a look at the series at a pivotal point of change, and how they handled what has become perhaps the worst episode, in my opinion. The episode opens up in New York City, the Statue of Liberty even present to make that clear, which apparently is where Scrappy is from, explaining Weinrib's accent he gives him, and he's excited in particular to introduce his old gang to his Uncle Scooby. As they get a sudden shower from below, the gang drop the boys off and leave us behind, not returning until the very end. These two men meanwhile are spying, both recognizing Scooby, who apparently is now famous. Their names are Carl and Tony. Our villains are just two regular dudes named Carl and Tony. Scrappy runs past to do his secret whistle, alerting his friend Annie, who obnoxiously falls down the fire escape, bouncing up their friend Duke. They burst into this big huddle, and Scrappy brags about all he's been up to the last 15 episodes since he left. And then he literally picks up his uncle to share with the class. And as the introductions continue, the two men are certain they have their target now that it's confirmed. The five cluelessly tour around New York City, the boys gravitating toward a grocery store, and Scooby is so busy eating on the way out that he walks right into the truck that Carl and Tony set up. As Shaggy walks out and realizes, he hears Scooby yell and chases after them, so Scrappy picks up Annie so the three can join, while Shaggy hops in the back with Scoob. Unfortunately, the truck speeds away, leaving the trio of puppies to figure this one out.
They don't know who they are dealing with. Ta-da-da-da-da-da! Puppy power!
Duke stops him to consider finding a clue that will help find them, and looking at what fell off the truck, Andy examines the busted box which says Paris Warehouse. Duke recognizes the place, only a subway ride away from here, so they begin their journey. Now morning, the truck arrives at the warehouse, and the two men explain they're going to hold the boys for ransom. Seems they aren't very good at it though. Bro just asks to call Hollywood in general, which again begs the question about how Scooby is now famous in this continuity. We are on the verge of Scooby-Doo Goes Hollywood. The boys start preparing for their great escape meanwhile, but as they reach the bottom, Carl is right there having just finished his call, so they obediently go back up. The puppies at the subway entrance have only just now made it, and chase down some money to use, lose it in a drain, use gum to fish it out, and dress up in a trench coat since they only have fare for one. Back at the warehouse, the boys have prepared a message in a bottle, but it gets stuck on Scoob's finger, and when it flies out, the bottle just smashes to pieces and the letter flies out. Worse, the two goons heard the noise, so Tony shuts the window and adds some bars, and with it being ransom or nothing, they're left to cry about it. Outside the warehouse, the puppies have finally arrived, and deduce that the hostages must be in the top room with the obvious bars on the window.
And I'm gonna go up there and splat them with a capital S.
They start going through the crates around them and find plungers and bows, which gives Scrappy an idea. Back inside, Shag and Scoob are preparing to crawl through the air vent, but as they make their way deeper in, the two goons can easily see them pass above. Outside, the puppies aim their plungers and shoot, creating their own ladder to climb, and squeezing through the bars. The creepers are freaked enough to run into the other room and lock the door at least. The boys in the vent meanwhile spot an opening, and crawl through without looking down, falling right down back into the truck they came in, Tony and Carl driving away with their hostages yet again. That night, so like 24 hours now have passed since we started, they already have the boys on a ship, but they already used their message in a bottle, so not much for them to do. The puppies make their way over, sniffing their way to the truck that unfortunately is very empty. Annie walks off doing her best Mae West impression to use her quote-unquote feminine wiles on the guy in the phone booth, who is actually Tony requesting $1 million for the hostages.
Hey, come on, this is Scooby-Doo we're talking about.
He walks off angrily, slamming Annie in the door, so the puppies do their best to follow him and hop onto his little boat. Inside the ship, Shaggy finds an inflatable life raft, so he starts shoving it out the porthole. But Scoob wonders what this fun little string is and pulls it, activating the raft inside, which kills that plan.
What have you got to say for yourself, old pal?
Nobody's perfect.
Tony pulls the boat back up and rejoins Carl, leaving it free for the puppies to follow and start looking around. Back to the boys. They've stacked a bazillion boxes and somehow crawled on top, trying to reach the hatch. But Scoob finally looks down and realizes their height. Shaggy thankfully steadies himself and gets it open, making it to freedom. But the stupid, awful puppies see it and think it's the goons, so they rush over and sit on the hatch, throwing the boys back down. When they finally look in to celebrate, they find the mangled bodies of Scrappy's poor uncle and his friend. Scrappy at least tosses a rope as Shaggy requests, except he tosses the whole thing instead of keeping one end to pull them out. So there goes that idea. To rub salt in the wound, the puppies are caught in the act by the goons, so they have to make a mad dash to escape. Shaggy's pitiful arm finally almost makes it out, but Scrappy trips and sends his barrel he hid under flying at him and knocking him down once more.
Who's gonna save us from Scrappy's gang?
Scrappy prepares a trap as the crooks head toward it, but the boys also finally make it out and start running, just as the crooks decide to go the other way. So when the puppies jump to activate the trap, it's Shag and Scoob that go flying, right back down the hatch where they started. I'm tired. Are you tired? And deserved at this point. The puppies get trapped themselves with this net. Shag and Scoob try pushing the raft out the window again, which ends up bursting it, taking them with it as it goes flying fast as hell, and finally crashes back on the ship, landing on the crooks. As the puppies celebrate Uncle Scooby's heroism, the goons say Uncle as well and give up, ready to go to prison rather than put up with this any further. Later that night, Scrappy says goodbye to his friends as they ask him to share their secret whistle one more time, which Shaggy refuses after the last time. The rest of the gang back now and having missed it before, they want to hear, so he gives it a whirl, and they definitely seem to regret it, even destroys the mystery machine. Was it worth it? And there we have it.
Scrappy-Dappy-Doo!
And Scooby-Dooby-Doo too.
And that's the Ransom of Scooby Chief. What a strange little episode of Scooby-Doo. Is it the worst episode, or is that just clickbait? Well, that's subjective. Maybe you personally have an episode that is far worse than this. For me, this is the worst. I think the fact that it's in a season that otherwise is actually really solid and enjoyable, and then this shows up as the season finale and is just a total stinker, really makes it stand out. You might go into this season now expecting a bunch of duds because of Scrappy's reputation, and then you get 15 mostly good or really sincerely great episodes. You're all prepared to watch the 16th episode, the finale, expecting something really enjoyable again. And then most of the gang abandon us and leave us with 3 puppies and our 2 adults kidnapped. And suddenly, you realize that this episode is actually not at all like those 15 that you had just binge-watched before. No, there is something deeply wrong with this one. You don't have to know that it's low-key setting us up for the most hated era of the franchise. You can just feel that there is something deeply wrong with this episode very quickly. And because it forces upon us Scrappy's little friends, and he still has his much worse original voice actor, it's actually so much worse than any of the upcoming episodes would actually ultimately be. Surely there are people that like this episode, and you could probably find worse, but I think this one might be the worst for me just because it really is the sign of what was to come. This was the turning point, and you can tell that this is the moment everything changed. People hate Scrappy because he's an annoying, dumb little brat child, and in this episode, much as I defend him in his final appearances, he really is a dumb, awful little brat in this. And he has 2 little brat friends that make it tripled, and not that kind of brat. I wish it was that kind of brat. The little times we go back to the boys in their various predicaments are the only times I find this episode enjoyable, and it just makes it so much worse when they almost get out every now and then those awful, terrible brats ruin their escape over and over. It's not very funny to me, it's very serious. Worse, the only single line that Velma has is delivered by Marla Frumpkin, because this was during the time that she took over Velma. Easy way to get me to dislike an episode. Very rarely am I a big fat hater on Scooby media. Famously, I should be more of a hater sometimes. If you know, you know. Today, I will be a hater. And that's all I will say about this one, because I really don't want to waste more of my time, or your time. We should be wasting time on better episodes. I'm sorry we wasted this much. There are much better episodes in this season especially, and I recently covered several of them, like the Sexy Minotaur, or the Westworld-inspired episode. Go watch those videos. As for the channel, the Patreon is now live if you want to support it directly, like and subscribe, all that fun stuff. I'm sorry we started the first month of 2026 like this. See you around. Bye!